The fuck is a Skinwalker?
Navajo myth. Being of evil that can change shape by throwing a skin over himself.
This is a story of a guy I met in the woods and a few friends of his. I can't guarantee anything as to its accuracy. I'm just going on what he told me to be true. Be friend and a couple buddies. Head out on the Highline Trail in Utah's Wintas Mountains for a week. Have enough cars in the group so as to be able to park one at each end of the trail. Everybody is excited to be out in the mountains together. Not long before weird things start happening. It starts out with things like hiking poles and backpacks end up at opposite sides of camp where people left them. Everybody's boots are upside down in the morning. They hang their food bags on certain trees at night, but find them tied to certain other trees in the morning. Most people brush this stuff off as animals or someone in their group getting a midnight snack. Weirder and weirder shit starts happening. My friend wakes up to find muddy handprints all over the inside of his tent fly, in between the inner tent and the fly. As they're hiking, they lose the trail only to backtrack and find large, freshly cut branches and clever disguise laid over the actual trail. People are starting to think that they're being stalked. What really starts freaking people out is waking up to find their tents rearranged in their campsite. The stakes of the non-freestanding tents look like they're all undisturbed, but the tents are all in different places around camp. Nobody has any idea how their tents could have been all moved around, and in some cases, apparently broken down and repitched, with none of them noticing or waking up. Next night, they decide to keep watch in 3-hour shifts. Everyone is on edge. Watchmen get thick branches, tie knives to the ends, and arm themselves with bear mace. The first half of the night, nothing happens. Then it's my friend's turn to stand watch. He's got his camera because he figures the flash can illuminate wide areas if something comes close. It doesn't matter though because he falls asleep just before dawn and nothing happens that night. Next morning, somebody asks him why he was taking pictures the last night. My friend freezes, slowly takes out his camera, checks the memory. There's pictures of everybody in the group sleeping, including himself. By following a creek a little ways upstream, they are able to find the trail, which someone recognizes as being not too far from their campsite. They only have 12 miles to go before they get to the trailhead, but it's early afternoon, and they're doubtful they can finish their trip that same day. Reaching their campsite, they find all of their gear shredded in pieces. Apparently, only one backpack was unharmed. They find where their food had been hung, scooped up as much as they could, save from where it was scattered on the ground. Somebody luckily finds the car keys, and they run the rest of the way back, getting lost several times, but reaching the trailhead before dark. When they finally get to the trailhead, everyone is too exhausted to make camp or do any driving, so all 6 of them just pile into the car, lock the doors, and fall asleep. A knock on their window wakes them up early the next morning. It's the police, and the cop wants to know what these people are doing in a closed area. As they try to explain the situation, the cop tells his own story. The entire entrance to the forest had been closed for days due to abnormal animal activity. My friend is getting suspicious why the police are handling the closure and not the forest rangers. He asks as much. Cop goes quiet and looks away. Very awkward moment, which is interrupted by one of my friend's hiking companions in the car. He notices that there are about a dozen other cars in the parking lot, but they all have flat tires. Everybody gets out of the car, and they realize that their own tires are flat. At this point, the cop comes clean and explains that there's actually a manhunt in the area, but they're not sure what exactly they're dealing with. Lots of dead hikers turned up earlier in the week. My friend remembers the strange photos and gets out his camera to show the cop. The cop's face suddenly goes blank, and he hands back the camera. It's a photo that was taken inside the car the night before. Partially visible in the last photo, which is of my friend's sleeping face, like some kind of party photo where the taker holds the camera at arm's length to get himself in. It's the right half of a pure white face with black holes for eyes and a mouth full of sharpened animal-like teeth.
It was a Skinwalker, motherfucker. Captures one of them when they go to take a piss. Kills them. Becomes them.
Be around November of last year, Washington State.
New to the area, like the woods, so a few friends of mine that are huge in-a-woods fiends decide to take me out into a secluded as hell spot. What the hell? I'll do it. Need some time away from work. Get the weekend off, pack my bag, clean the rifle, and head over to friend's house. End up about 25 or 30 miles from the Canadian border in this forest that just goes on forever. I'm really digging it, 'cause my home state doesn't have shit like this. There's 6 of us and 2 dogs, a Labrador and a Rottweiler. Each person also has either a hunting rifle or shotgun with a handgun, except me. Park cars on this tiny-ass game warden or border patrol dirt road and hike about 4 miles into the woods. By this time, it's already starting to get a little dark, so we decide to build a fire right off so we can set up tents. 2 of the group and 1 of the dogs go out to gather wood while the rest of us start setting up the tent. One of those huge sodding 6 to 8 person ones. November gets cold up there. Tents set up in about 15 minutes. The trio still aren't back yet. What the fuck must be fucking LOL, so we just say screw it and start one from some branches from around the site. Start hearing crashing noises headed our way, like someone running their asses off. The 2 guys come barreling through, wide-eyed as fuck. The dog ain't nowhere to be seen. They start yammering on about seeing one of the other guys out in the woods acting weird, so they started trying to get close. Every time they'd get close, though, he would move away. Said at one point he disappeared, then popped up not 10 feet behind them. Also mentioned a really bad rotten meat and spoiled milk smell popping up around them. Tried asking what was up, no answer. Then apparently he took off just sprinting like Usain Bolt into the woods. Dog takes off after him, barking its head off. The 2 dudes take off after the dog. Lose both the guy and the dog pretty soon, and the smell starts disappearing as well. Far off, hear a weird screeching, followed by a really loud dog's yelp. Then the smell comes back with a vengeance, this time with what they described as mad giggling. They nope the fuck out of there and back to the camp. They get really pissed at the dude. All of us that were there vouch for the guy, so pretty soon we're all weirded out, but think it's a really fucked up joke. I say as much and I get yelled at, then have, "Well, where the fuck is the dog then?" Tossed at me. Fuck. Good point. At this point, though, the sun was already well on its way down, so we build the fire up and bring out some Coleman lanterns as well. All of us are huddled round the fire, eating MREs, and our guns are at hand. About 15 minutes after dark, the remaining dog, the Rottweiler, kind of perks up and starts growling, and I mean that really fucking aggressive growl. Smell pops up, and the guys were not wrong about the smell. I have smelled rotten deer carcasses that smelled fresher. Weird groanings start up, and you can hear branches and leaves crackling out around the perimeter of our camp. Noping intensifies all around. The dog is going ballistic, so one of the guys with a shotgun, let's call him Greg, stands up and fires off 3 rounds of buckshot into the woods. This hellacious screech comes out of the woods and starts moving away from us fast as hell, and the smell goes as well. We wait about an hour, then decide to try and get some sleep with 2 people on guard at all times. First watch is me and another of the guys, Victor. The dog is chilling around the fire as well. 2 hours up, nothing. Wake up Greg and Tom for their turn. Asleep for a little, then wake up to that smell and Greg yelling his head off. So we get up and head outside. Greg is looking around the edge of the woods with a spotlight and calling out Tom's name. Ask what happened. They'd been sitting there when they heard one of the guys from earlier calling out from the woods. The dog started growling and rushed the spot, and Tom followed after. Dog has went through some bushes and he'd lost him, so Tom followed him into the woods. Greg had been yelling for him when he heard Tom begin to say something before he was cut off. Shit, can't leave him out there. So we all put on some clothes, grab a flashlight or spot for each person in our guns and head out. By this time the smell was everywhere, and it was making most of us rather nauseous, but we kept going because we wanted to find Tom. Find some of his tracks, but lose the trail when they just stop. Literally no other footprints after a while, and none leading back the way he'd come. One of the guys at the back is shining his light around, kinda stops and makes an oh shit noise, then starts yelling, "You fucking dick, we've been worried sick about you." Rest of group walks over to look, and there's Tom standing a good 20 feet away. But he's standing all wrong. "You okay, buddy? You need some help?" Just stands there deadpan, then slowly nods yes. A few of us walk over and put an arm around his shoulders to kinda support him. Notice he reeks. What the fuck, dude? We haven't even been out here for a full day. LOL. Laughs abound, except from him. Think nothing of it, except worry that maybe he fell and hit his head. Back at camp, try and lay him down, but he just refuses to, so we let him stay outside at the fire. A couple of us go to sleep, but Greg, Vic, and I decide to stay up to keep an eye on Tom. Watching him, he does a weird jerk/muscle spasm thing every now and then. Creepy shit, but think it might be something serious. He's mostly quiet, slow to respond to things until it comes to food. We give him an MRE to eat and he only eats the meat out of them, shrug it off as whatever. Then he gets up and starts moving around all jerky-like, looking towards the woods. He asks us if we want to come into woods with him for firewood. Besides the fact that it's pitch black out besides the fire and the huge stack of firewood we'd collected on the way back, not all that weird. Jerks something like a shrug before walking weirdly into the woods. At this point, we're on guard and don't try to stop him. Greg gets up a few minutes later to step into the tent for something, so I'm outside with Vic when the smell hits my nose like a ton of bricks, and I gag hard. Then I start hearing gibbering and giggling. I've never been more freaked out in my life, and you can tell that Vic is feeling the same. Greg comes out in time to hear it really well, then goes inside to wake everyone up. He freezes at the tent flap, then starts cursing, which wakes everyone up. Dunno why he's cussing, but it's working. When they're all up and awake, he counts everyone, and you can see him turn white. "What's up, dude?" Apparently, while he was inside, he did a quick body count, and there was 4 bodies inside. Someone or something had been chilling in our motherfucking tent without us realizing it had gotten in. Shit bricks, and shit them hard. Then everyone starts asking where Tom is. At this time, the gibbering gets louder, and you can hear a bunch of shit moving through the woods. We hear Tom's voice calling at us from the woods to come help him, but it's all off key, and every now and then he'd start giggling. We build the fire up and sit around it with all the lanterns on full, weapons at hand until the sun starts coming up. Soon as it's up enough to see, we put the fire out, pack our stuff, and make for the vehicles. On the path back, we find the 2 dogs, one impaled on a snapped pine, the other one with its neck snapped and twisted around. We start hearing the giggling, and the smell returns, so we start noping hard back for the car. We get there and there's scratches all over them. Most of the windows are smashed out, and the seats are ripped to shreds. Whatever, that shit ain't important. Just need these babies to run. Toss keys into ignition and hear the sweet, glorious sound of an internal combustion engine start up. Toss shit in, get in, and we speed out of there. Don't talk about it for a few months, and most of us don't admit it happened. One of the guys with us told me later that he'd seen Tom at the edge of the woods staring at us as we left with this creeping fucking grin on his face. I believe him. And I know that I'll never go camping that far away again without a lot more people than 6.
So I was in Arizona visiting my grandma and grandpa. I was a young little fuck, let's say 13. Grandpa was this old army vet, tough as fuck, always had a cigar in his mouth, swore like a sailor, had to get shit-faced every night to sleep. He was still cool as fuck to me, always let me shoot guns with him in the desert. So one day of vacation, Mom and Dad get roped into looking at some houses with Grandma. They thought we were going to move down there, huh? Grandpa E vaxed me from that shit, and we hop in his truck to head into the desert to go pow-pow. Drive out miles on some random trail. Can't see the town we came from. Can't see shit but sand and cactuses. Perfect. Start setting up cans and random metal targets from Gramps' truck out a few yards away, like usual. Get shit set up and meet Gramps back at the truck. This is how I know my grandpa wasn't fucking around for the rest of this. He kneels down next to me and puts his hand on my shoulder. Bondingtime.mp4. Anon, you're a smart kid. Good shot too, so I want you to see this. Granddad takes a handgun from the back of his waistband and hands it to me. Old as fuck 1911, heavy as shit with scratches and marks all over it. Granddad tells me that was his service pistol and he wanted me to shoot it that night. Felt slick as fuck. Even better when Granddad took a holster from the back of the truck and helped me put it on my waist. Holster held the gun and 2 extra mags. Remember feeling like a cowboy? LOL, Granddad gets a rifle from the truck and sets up on the back. About an hour or so into shooting, it starts to get dark. If you've ever been in the desert at just about sundown, the whole sky lights up with colors. Makes me think there's a god for a bit. Gramps thinks we should start heading out. We both walk over to start picking up targets and cans that are still intact. I walk out to the far targets like a cowboy, bow-legged, feeling cool, handgun in my right hand. Get a huge whiff of shit all of a sudden. Turn looking around for the source and peeking over a small dune. Maybe 30 feet away was this overweight white guy in a very dirty white shirt. Thing had holes and was covered in dirt and muck. Looks like he hasn't seen civilization in months. Hair was all frazzled, and he had the blankest look on his face. Guy starts walking up and over the mound towards me, and I instantly halt tracks and start to backpedal. Gramps takes notice and yells at the guy to fuck off, and that he has a gun. Guy doesn't even glance at him and just keeps walking at me. So fight or flight, right? Usually the brain picks one. Mine tried to pick both. Feet tried to run. Arms raised the handgun to fire. End up stumbling and shooting around off into the distance. Next few seconds felt like minutes. Big guy starts sprinting at me, yelling with this unholy gurgle. Sounded like a water pump with the bass cranked up. I turned and ran towards Gramps, who had already started advancing, rifle raised. I am about 20 feet from Gramps when he fires 3 shots to my right. I hear that dull thunk of bullets tearing through flesh and fat. Turn head over shoulder and see nothing. No fat guy, no bullet holes, nothing. Turn back to Grandpa, who's about 10 feet away, and he looks as confused and scared as I feel. Keep running towards him when I hear a gurgle off to my right. A thin little fucker who could have been Lardo's brother comes over another small dune, maybe 30 feet from my grandpa and I. Guy looks just as bad. His pants are torn and he has no shoes. Feet must have been blistered to shit. Grandpa's doesn't even wait with this one and dumps 5 bullets into him. I was pretty close to him and didn't expect more shooting, so in panic I dropped his 1911 in the sand right by his feet as he's firing. I see all the bullets hit Skinny's center mass, and he falls back over the dune, and that telltale ping of the Garand telling us she's empty. Gramps looks down at his handgun, then grabs me, throwing me under his arm, and hauls ass to the truck. Didn't complain, was starting to cry at this time. Throws his rifle in the back and peels the heel out of the clearing. Had to drive around the dune where Skinny was. No body at the bottom, but there were marks in the dune to where a body could have slid down. I've never done 80 over sand in a truck again, but I bet if I wasn't shitting myself that Grandpa murdered 2 people, I would have found it fun. After I've calmed down, we still have a good 30 minutes until we're back home. Grandpa doesn't mention anything about what happens and drives right past home and goes to Walmart. Takes me to the video game section and buys me an Xbox 360 and Halo. Imagining ourselves at the checkout sounds fucking funny. I looked petrified, and he had that 1,000-yard stare ever since we got in the truck. On the way back home, he tells me not to say anything to my parents and just go to bed. Find out he told them that I had almost had an accident by shooting myself, which wasn't a lie, and that it had really freaked me out, so he bought me a present. Find out he tells Dad that he lost his 1911 last year in the move. I left vacation never able to talk to him about it. He died about 2 years later, went peacefully in his sleep. After I got older and started diving into /x/, I realized what happened that night. That or Grandpa had magic bullets that make bodies disappear.
The summer after senior year is filled with many happy memories that many of us will never forget. This is not one of those memories. Be me, 18, living in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. Senior year is about to get out, and it's been warm lately. Let's fucking ragemate.jpg plan huge senior skip day party up by a lake a town over. There are actually 2 lakes near the next town. One is lower than the other, and the higher one is warmer and used to fill the second one during the summer. We decided the best bet for the party would be at the higher lake, because less cops, more forest to run and hide in, and more privacy for our heathen ways. Fast forward a couple days to the day of the party. A metric fuck ton of people are headed up to swim and party with us. Probably more like 20, but we filled 2 Suburban and 1 pickup. Driving up, everyone is cramped and excited, singing along to songs and drinking. Pretty fun time. The road we were on was pretty windy, with a steep hill going up on one side and smaller downward sloping hill leading down to the lake on the other. We pull off to the shoulder, and a small army of hormones unloads into the water. Water is warm, girls are pretty enough, and the drinks are flowing. We don't even hear the man come up on us. Suddenly a girl, let's call her Brittany, starts screaming and pointing at him. We all look and kind of freak out because he has a gun in the crook of his arm. He laughs and introduces himself as Wayne. Drunken friend Nick offers him a beer, and me and a couple others start talking a bit with him. Eventually the issue of the gun comes up, and Wayne explains that he's hunting something in the woods. I remember this specifically because he was pretty vague about what he was after, and I was thinking, we're going to relive Deliverance tonight, and I'm just praying I'm not going to be Bobby and have to squeal like a pig. Of course, drunk-ass Nick tells him our plans for the night, camping, partying, etc. Wayne gets a little quiet and says that tonight might not be the best night for that. Ignore that shitlum-a-drunk-teen.pdf. Eventually, Wayne fucks off to go hunt Sasquatch or whatever. Side note about Wayne. Last summer, he was actually killed up by that lake. There was an article in the papers about him being some master tracker and living out in those woods for long periods of time. I don't think his death had anything to do with the later events of this story, but the general consensus around the town at the time of his death was that the news story was bullshit. Anyways, a girl Shannon decided that her and her boyfriend would go set up camp. I guess that's what the kids are calling it these days. They take the pickup up the mountain more to the site and proceed to touch genitals. Couple hours later, we say fuck swimming and all pile back into the cars. Because the spare seats on the pickup left, some people have to pile in back of the Suburbans. Something seemed a little off at the time, but we chalked it up to the booze. We keep driving up the road counting the mile markers as we went up. The road to the site was a shitty gravel road off the main road, past mile marker 20. We head up the road a ways and have to stop because a tree is across the path. Not that large of a tree, so we all pile out and get it off to the side. We all climb back into the cars, and once again something seems off. Did we forget someone? Asks Nick. We concluded that we had the 18 people that we needed, but something still felt odd. Eventually we make it up to the site. Obviously this wasn't an actual campsite, and I have no idea how my friends found it, but apparently they had gone to this spot a few times before and never had any problems with the law. It was about 7 miles down the gravel road, deep into the forest of evergreens. It was surrounded on all sides by thick walls of trees. It was a pretty good-sized spot, but more importantly it was secluded, which was exactly what we needed for the night. There was a large fire pit in the middle, but the stones around it had apparently been scattered around the clearing. The pickup is parked there, but no people are outside, and the camp is like 10% set up. We decide to fuck with Shannon and her boyfriend Kyle, but when we came up on the truck, we saw them fully clothed, just kind of sitting in the back. Nick bangs his hand on the window, and I swear they about jumped out of their skins. They realize who it is, and come out, a little shaken but laughing. We ask what had them so rattled, and they explain that they had started setting up camp about an hour ago. We know what they did for the first hour or two, when they stopped to have a smoke break. They said they had been by the fire pit when a really gross smell started to come from the woods. They had gone to the edge of the clearing when they had heard low voices babbling off in the woods. They noped the fuck out and locked themselves in the truck. Immediately, we were blamed for fucking with them, until I pointed out that about an hour ago, we were all trying to move a tree that they left for us in the middle of the road. All around confusion when they said there had been no tree on the way up. But whatever, Oregon has a lot of trees, and they fall over sometimes, because trees are stupid like that. These two were probably just paranoid from the weed. We finish setting up the camp as the sun begins to set and begin the preparations for the night. We make some food, but with 20 people it goes pretty quickly. We continue drinking, smoking, and having a good time as the sun got lower and disappeared. It was about 10:30 when one of the girls comes running out of the woods screaming bloody murder. Everyone stops what they're doing, and listens to her sob about a person out in the woods. She said his back was to her, and he was just kind of looking at the ground. When she called out to it, it raised its head and started twitching. This was when she realized it wasn't one of us and got the hell out of there. Most of the guys there were drunk and immediately angry at this guy in the woods. We decided it must be Wayne fucking with us, and so an elite squad of drunken high schoolers, armed with varying sizes of branches, went out towards where she saw it. We split up briefly in the woods, which was a very eerie feeling, and after about 15 minutes we decided we had scared Wayne off. We were regrouping back at the camp when the smell started again. The only thing I can describe it as is the smell of burnt hair, plus the metallic smell of having a bloody nose, only 10 times worse. One or two of the drunker people actually vomited. One of the guys, Sam, decides he's had enough and wants to go back. After some debate, we decided that he was probably sober enough to drive, and that we would let him take a full pickup load back to his house. The girl from the woods, her boyfriend, Sam, and a second girl leave in the truck. The smell had died down quite a bit. Don't want to be labeled a pussy. Ignore that shit. I'm a drunk teen. .pdf. We continue drinking and having fun, ignoring the feeling of something being off. Eventually, I have to pee, so my friends Fletcher and Heston, referred to as Skeeter by our friends, walk down the gravel road a few hundred feet to drain the main vein. As we're peeing, we notice someone in the middle of the road a little ways down. I'm a little uneasy, but Skeeter is a big dude. Went on to play college football as a linebacker, so I figure we're going to be okay. We walk up on the person, who has their back to us once again. I recognize that sweatshirt. Sam is standing in the middle of the road, in the dark, looking at the ground. Once again, something seems off, but I can't quite place it. So we start to call out to him. No response. Start walking towards him and his head lifts up and can see him twitching. I finally realized what was so off. The woods around us are dead silent, and have been for some time. I stop my two friends and whisper this to them. Skeeter doesn't think it's a big deal, but Fletcher is an avid hunter and agrees that something isn't right. We look back at Sam and he is about half as far away as he was before. Back still turned and twitching, looking like he was doubled over, silently laughing. That did it for Skeeter, and we all sprint back to the campground. The rest of the group is looking at us worriedly, because all of us, even the giant-ass Skeeter, are pale as a sheet, stammering about how we need to leave. There is a large argument about how none of us can drive because we're all too drunk, and that if we're trying to mess with them, it's not very funny. The smell comes back, worse this time, and I actually vomited, mostly beer. Branches begin to snap around the outskirts of the camp. We can only hear this because the forest hasn't hit unmute yet. Fletcher, the hunter, looks like he's about to shit himself as he points out that a four-legged animal wouldn't make sounds like that when walking, only a bipedal one. That's when we hear it. A low guttural voice comes out of the woods. Give me a fucking beer. Would have been comical if I wasn't already shitting myself and the voice had been normal. It sounded like a dog mixed with a woman screaming, with irregular pauses and volume adjustments. Help me, fuckers. Mass fucking panic. People running to cars, manage to get one of the subs filled, and send it off with the designated drunk driver, my friend Nick. We fill the other Suburban and I'm left outside to put out the fire. Well, drunk and on, 18 years ain't a bad run. Dead fucking sprint to throw the water bucket over the fire, Usain Bolt it back to the car. Probably could have gotten a full ride if someone timed me. Dive over the 2 full rows of seats and take my spot in the very back. We make it back to the main road and are about halfway back to town when we see the other Suburban in a ditch with everyone around it. Drunk-ass Nick crashed. Nick won't really meet eyes with anyone and is muttering something under his breath. I get closer to him and realize he's reciting the Hail Mary under his breath. He won't acknowledge me and looks pale as a sheet. The smell is back. We are trying to figure out what to do when the whole road is lit up like day. One of those huge lifted trucks with about 1 million lights on it pulls up to us. It stops and shines its lights on us for what seems like an hour. Probably more like a minute, though. The lights cut off and Wayne hops out, his gun in hand. Pretty uneventful from here. crams the people from First Suburban into his pickup, asks each one of us for our names before he lets anyone get back into any car, drops us all at our friend's house, and leaves. Nick gets a fat ticket and a suspended license for DUI and leaving the scene of the accident, but his mom's Suburban seems okay. He killed himself about 3 months later. He had been complaining about lack of sleep, and I think the whole experience really fucked with him. Skeeter and I ran into Wayne again, later that summer at the lake. We saw his truck at a popular swimming hole and went to ask a few questions. He seemed pretty honest about most things until I asked him why he had been so intent on asking us all of our names the night he picked us up, because we assumed he was planning on reporting us to the Rangers or something, but we never heard anything about it, besides Nick. I'll never forget his answer. When I pulled up to you guys, I counted 17 people, but when I asked for your names, I only got 16. One of your little friends walked back into the woods when I had my lights on him. Of course, it sounded like bullshit to me until I began to think of the events that night. Starting with the swimming hole, there had been something off about the trip that I hadn't realized until we had gotten into the cars. There had always been an extra person with us. I think they slipped in during the swimming and slipped out when we were moving the tree. It came back in when we sent out our little hunting party and must have slipped back out when we were all drinking, only to come back into the group when we were all shitting ourselves trying to get out of there. That's why I had to sit in the back, because we had an extra person that put us over the seat limit. I don't think it was ever in my car, though. I think my friend Nick noticed it in his car, and that's what made him crash. That's what made him cry and pray that night, and I guarantee that's what made him kill himself.
Sounds like something from a movie. Local Wayne came out of nowhere, warn you people. Of course stupid teenager won't listen. Proceed to get fucked by Skinwalker, whatever.